Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to the Falcons vs. Ravens Week 16 post-game show here on the Falcoholic Live. Couple days late, but no one really wanted to record or listen to anything about this game on Christmas Eve. We have better things to be doing with our time, but we are here now to break this game down. I'm Kevin. I have Falcoholic Kevin, joined by my co-host today. He is the newest addition to the Falcoholic, Jordan Watkins at Big 75 fella. Jordan, how we doing?
You know what? We're getting there. We're getting there. That was a tough loss to deal with, but of course, since it's the holiday season, get to hang around. Some loved ones don't have to work that much, and the work that I did have to do, it was working a Warriors Christmas game, so that's not too bad.
Yeah, not bad at all. That doesn't sound. I don't know how the game went. I wasn't watching, but hopefully more fun than the Falcons game went.
Oh, it was great. It's one of those. So the best way I could look at it is obviously not one of our biggest rivals. Talking about the Falcons are the Saints, and one thing Saints love to do, well, more so their fans than the team itself, they love to talk. So whenever you can beat a team that loves to talk a lot, it feels pretty good, and that's what the Warriors did last night. They played the Grizzlies. They've had a lot to say ever since that Warriors Grizzlies playoff series last year. So Warriors put it on them, and again, that's with no Steph and no Andrew Wiggins too. So that was pretty sweet.
Yeah, it sounds great. And I was just thinking, I think we had you on for your first Falcoholic Live a couple days ago, and you just had to get back on as soon as possible. And so that's a good sign. Had to just jonesing for the show so quickly. I love that. So I appreciate you coming on and making time on a non-traditional recording day for me on a Monday. But nobody wanted to record on Christmas or Christmas Eve, and I don't blame them. I certainly didn't want to either. So next best time.
For sure.
Good time to do it now. We've had some time to think about the game too. I mean, I literally just got a chance to watch it finally, but I know you've had a couple days now to think about it. So we'll break it down. It was a frustrating watch, for me, coming off watching it just now. Some officiating, stuff, and that's never fun. But the Falcons really just missed a ton of opportunities. I mean, they had a lot of chances to win this game, or at least score more points. This is once again a one-score loss. 9-17. Falcons only actually managed the 9 points, but they were much closer to contending in this game than the score might suggest. And the Falcons actually outgained the Ravens in terms of total yardage as well. I think time of possession also. So a frustrating game. I thought the defense again, it wasn't pretty. I don't think anything this defense does is ever pretty at this point, but they held to 17 points. The Falcons had plenty of opportunities in the fourth quarter to go down and tie this up. So don't want to criticize the defense too much because I feel like it's like kicking somebody when they're down. It's like, okay, we know we've spent no money on you defense, and there are no expectations for you to be good, but they're an easy scapegoat, so I don't want to drag them too much, but maybe a few opportune moments during the show to do that.
Really?
But yeah, I'll let you go first, Jordan. There's a lot to get to in this. Desmond Ritter's second start, obviously, I think was encouraging, even though it didn't translate to a bunch of points. And the offense, some good players there, some frustrating things as well. Where would you like to go first with this one?
We can hit all three phases. Again, you started off with Desmond Ritter. I thought this was absolutely a step forward from his start last week in New Orleans for a lot of reasons. One, I thought that you saw him step up in the pocket and really drive some balls down the field, which is always great to see. I think that you saw that this connection that he has, the chemistry that he has with Drake London, it's real. It's very real, and it's something to build on. There are certain throws where I think Drake London made a couple of throws in traffic or between two guys, and it's like, why are you throwing that? But that's the trust that they have in each other. And that's the chemistry and the rapport that they have with each other. That's a big thing. And I'm not saying that they're on this level now, but it kind of reminds me very faintly of, even there are certain throws that I think Matt Ryan made to Julio Jones. We're like, why did you make that throw? Oh, it's because it's Julio Jones and you trust him. That's why. And I'm only excited with seeing how they bond together once Kyle Pitts is in this, or maybe you have another receiving threat out there, because ever since I'm not blaming this on Desmond Ridder. I just know ever since he's taken over, where has Olamide Zaccheaus gone? He was such a big, third down critical situation weapon for Marcus Mariota. In the last 2 weeks, we haven't seen much of him. So you put somebody else out there on the field with those two, and I mean, I'm really interested in see how that happened. I mean, for example, I guess the fact that we played the Ravens is pretty comical in my mind because when I saw, so I think Sammy Watkins was on the Packers and got put on waivers, and one of my first thoughts was, well, we need somebody out there to catch passes outside of Drake London. Might as well take a look at him. And he had a couple of big plays against us on Sunday. So I really would be interested to see just when he has that comfortability with some other weapons and other things around him, how that all looks. I still would love him to throw the ball away sooner. A couple plays in this game, he took some hits I didn't think he needed to take.
Yeah.
But I mean, even on the fourth down, when he threw it to Drake, and I know Drake fumbled, I'll have thoughts on that later. But you saw, like, he looked around you saw how he went through his progressions and then went back to who I think probably was option number one. That's impressive, especially for your second start. The fact that you have the comfortability to do that, look around, check one, nope, not there. Check two, not there. Three, no. Let's go back to one. Boom, it's there. That's very impressive to see from a rookie in their second start and not the greatest situation. So there's a lot there to grow from with Desmond Ridder. Tyler Algier, he's the real deal. I mean, I know that I feel like I don't need to explain that to people, but I just want to go ahead and put it out there. Tyler Algier is the real deal. Defensively, it's like you said. I mean, we could nitpick all we want. I really could too. I'm a defensive guy, as you know. But at the end of the day, if you look up on a scoreboard in an NFL game and you hold a team to 17 points, there's really not that much I can say about you. There just isn't. I also think that at times that the offense puts the defense in bad positions because they go either 3 and out. Sometimes it was 4 and out this game. And we know the lack of depth that the Falcons have, especially up front. And especially once, Marlon Davidson didn't work out. TQ, he's out for the year. And Anthony Rush was put on waivers. So they're really limited up front. And I think the thing is, sometimes the best way you can help out your defense is offense having long established drives throughout the game. And that didn't really happen. So that really put that defense behind the 8 ball, as limited as it already is. So that was tough for them to deal with. But I think, like with your tweet earlier, definitely a lot of things to build on though.
Yeah, I think I agree with what you said. Ridder certainly looked more comfortable, and that's important to see, even if it didn't translate to a bunch of touchdowns. I mean, I think there were opportunities for touchdowns that just were barely stopped, and some ticky-tack calls. Like I think that Patterson touchdown that was called back, that was pretty weak. Yeah. And I think Ridder threw the ball well. I mean, he started out pretty shaky, and I think that made a lot of people nervous. But I tried to tell people, like, he did this in college too. Like a lot of times his first drive be a little shaky, and then he would finish really strong. And I think he did that again in this game. He did the same thing against the Saints. Unfortunately, didn't really get to see how it would end, but I think there were signs of growth. I think that I really do enjoy his willingness to just chuck it down there to Drake London because he's down there somewhere, and that and Mariota would do that too, but it just was like it wasn't Drake London, it was like Olamide Zaccheaus was sort of his guy, and that's fine,
right?
And that did work, but it's like I'd probably rather just chuck it up to Drake London or Kyle Pitts. Like I'd rather those be your guys than Zaccheaus. No offense to Zaccheaus, but it's also, and you mentioned the chemistry's not there with the other receivers like it was for Mariota, and maybe part of that is Mariota had all season to build that chemistry. Yes. Drake London playing with the scout team, he's not really getting a chance to throw to these guys, which is even more impressive considering I guarantee you Drake London was never taking scout team snaps. So that's just a natural connection between those two, and it reminds me of Ridder and Alec Pierce, who's now a big threat for the Colts.
Indianapolis.
Yeah. So I'm glad that the Falcons got Ridder a receiver that they knew he would probably be very comfortable with, because Alec Pierce, a very similar style of receiver to Drake London. And I think Ridder's propensity to target guys like that is probably a positive direction for this offense versus Mariota. Because I think Mariota liked to target guys that were able to break open quickly and have a lot of space. And I think Ridder wants to rip it downfield and really go to his guys. And I think if Kyle Pitts was playing, we'd probably see a lot more Pitts targets as well, because Ritter, his willingness to throw into the tight windows, I think, has been one of the biggest differences between him and Mariota, to take those shots. And part of that's arm strength. I think it's pretty obvious that Ritter's arm is stronger, and he can rip the ball in there better than Mariota could. The accuracy hasn't been night and day better than Mariota, but it's certainly not any worse. And the one area where he really needs to work is his rushing. You can just tell he's not really that comfortable as a runner. He's not used to the NFL speed. I think in college he was effective as a runner, but it wasn't a high volume thing for him. And I think you can tell it's like he's got to adjust to the NFL defense's speed, because in college he might have had that extra tick to decide before he started to run. And because he was so athletic, he could just beat guys by doing that. In the NFL, you have to decide sooner. You have to make those decisions much faster, because if those guys are 2 feet closer to you now, it's a tackle for loss or a sack, whereas in college you could still rip off 10, 15 yards, no problem. So that's stuff that comes with experience, and I'm not surprised by it, considering, again, it wasn't really his big thing in college. But yeah, moving on to the Algier point that you raised, that's the biggest takeaway, and potentially one of the most meaningful things for this offense over these last 4 games is we might be seeing like the torch being passed to Tyler Algier from Cordarrelle Patterson, and Patterson sort of moving into more of a secondary role, maybe doing some more stuff in the passing game. We'll see. But Algier absolutely does look legit, like the real deal, and better than I really expected. That he has fully taken on the running back 1 role and looks capable of doing it. And there's not really, he doesn't have that dynamic speed. That's really the only thing, though. Like, his contact balance is special. And he's a great receiver. Like, he didn't really have a chance to do that a lot at BYU, but it's clear, like, he has great hands, great feel for, getting into those lanes and getting behind his blockers and just shrugging off contact after he catches a pass. Like, he's a 3-down back. Like, and that was, I think, something that I didn't want to assume he could be, and there was no reason to think that he couldn't, but also that's been way better than expected. And then, of course, he's doing what he did at BYU, but against a much higher level of competition. And that is really the only question I think people had about his game. And that's why he fell to this part of the draft, is that he wasn't a special athlete. And everyone's wondering, well, you're beating up on all the teams BYU's playing. Can you do that against, NFL caliber opponents? And it seems like the answer is clearly yes at this point.
I'll say this, because obviously I didn't have a big time NFL career. I think I spent 3 days in the NFL, and that was for rookie minicamp with the Falcons. But if you're strong and you're a good tackler on one level, you're probably a good one on the other. And I think that and I know, like, I'm not saying that it's just like apples to apples, but I'm saying at least on a basic standpoint. So when I say that, think about some of the teams that Tyler Algier won against, and think about, like we talked about, the performances that he had against them. If he can break tackles like that, because it wasn't like he was using his agility or speed or finesse moves to do it. He was just running through them. Like, even if there are certain college teams and defenses that aren't the best, they still have a lot of strong dudes on those defenses. And the fact that he could break through them, it shows you that's his ability. That's what he can do. Because I think that for the most part, as I understand running back play, the main things that separate what's going to be an NFL running back versus a college running back: can you pick up protections? Can you read certain blocks in the zone scheme or whatever scheme it may be to understand, hey, this is where this hole is going to be open? It's certain things like that. It's not, we see you able to break this tackle, we don't know if you'll be able to break it on here. Usually it doesn't come to that. So especially for Algier, you talked about it. He's not the high-end speed guy. But again, I think that's fine. I'm not worried about him being a high-end speed guy. You think about some of the best Falcons running backs that we've seen the last, maybe 2 decades. None of them were really high-end speed guys. Like Tevin Coleman, yeah, he was fast, but again, he wasn't even really the dominant guy in that rushing attack. Right. It was Devontae Freeman. Michael Turner wasn't the high-end speed guy. As quick as Warrick Dunn was, he wasn't, by the time he got to Atlanta, I'm not talking about when he was in Tampa Bay, he wasn't the high-end speed guy. I mean, TJ Duckett obviously wasn't, but they were fast enough and good enough with everything else that they had to make it work. And that is exactly what Tyler Algier is.
Mhm. Yeah, it's really like, and that's what I try to tell people when they watch the combine, like, oh, this running back, look at that 40. It's probably
Yeah,
that's probably the least important thing for the running back, because it's nice to be able to hit those home run sort of plays where you can take that carry and go 75 yards, but
absolutely.
that's not going to happen more than like 5% of you're going to have very few opportunities to actually break that sort of play. It's nice when you can, but more important is the down-to-down consistency and that ability to get 5 yards on average, as opposed to being able to get 75 yards, once or twice. Like,
Mhm.
and that's exactly what we're seeing with Algier, and it's really he's clearly a quick learner. This is a guy walked on to college, played linebacker, and then finally got to
Yep.
play running back and just hit the ground running in a very short period of time. And it's the same thing here in Atlanta, where Algier started off a little slow, didn't have a tremendous amount of success in his early games. I think his first few games where he played, he was averaging, fairly low yards per carry. And then he just sort of turned it on right around, I don't know, week. It seems like he really turned a corner starting with that Chargers game where he had almost
Mhm.
100 yards, and just sort of never looked back from there, and has been averaging, generally well over 5 in most of the games since then. And you have to like the receiving ability as well. That's just such an
Absolutely.
underrated part. And I think the pass blocking has been pretty solid when he's been asked to do that as well. And that's definitely something that's a learning curve for guys that aren't asked to do a lot of it in college. And he wasn't, because he was their bell cow back. He was their 20 plus rushing touchdowns. You don't like you need if he's not running the ball, you want him off the field getting a breather. So, I've been really impressed with Algier, and I think that's one of the most meaningful developments over the last few games of the season, is that running back is really, really not a need. Like, maybe you can't depend on Patterson to be as dynamic as he was last year anymore. He does seem to have slowed down a bit, but he doesn't need to be when Tyler Algier can be your running back one now. And like the rest of this running back room, like Caleb Huntley's going to miss some time with this Achilles, but
Yeah.
we've seen that it's not the debilitating career-ending injury it used to be for running backs. We've now seen a number of guys come back successfully from it, including Deontay Foreman. And I guess Travis Etienne, I believe, as well, was an Achilles injury. Maybe that was ACL. But either way, it's not as bad as it used to be. So I wouldn't be too concerned about Huntley not being able to recover from that. So you've got him, and you've got Avery Williams, who is playing running back for the first time since high school, and I think looks perfectly fine as sort of a change of pace back. So there's really no room for even more running backs. And I only bring that up because Bijan Robinson's been such a popular pick to the Falcons. But I think every pick that they rise up the draft order, it makes that less likely to happen, folks. So there's just going to be too many other options. But yeah.
Also, I see what you did there. You said rise up to draft
Yeah, there you
order.
go.
I wanted to highlight one thing too. So I think it was Jason Gaines. I got the YouTube comments going on. He talked about work done still having the big play speed, and he's right. I'm saying that obviously when we had Warren done here, he's a little bit older in his career, but also, did we not see Tyler Algier at least have some breakaway speed in the New Orleans game? Remember, this was one of my favorite plays of the game. The Falcons went tackle heavy on one side. They overloaded the offensive line one side. Desmond Ritter's under center, and Tyler Algier was lined up over the guard. This was my favorite play of the game because I love the creativity and just the construction behind it. And he made a big play happen out of it. So my whole thing is Tyler Algier still has big play speed. Now it's not like he's running a 4.342,
Right.
and that's the point that I'm trying to make out of that in terms of, a lot of the big play backs that the Falcons have had over, again, the last 2 decades or so, they don't have that. Jarius Norwood and Antone Smith are probably the 2 biggest home run hitting speed guys that we've had for a while, and Tevin Coleman. Those are those 3 guys. But they also were not the most consistent running backs the Falcons have had, and they also weren't the most consistent big play backs the Falcons have had. So that's my point in terms of the 40 time. It doesn't show everything and tell everything.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So I just want to clear that. But Jason made a great point. So I just wanted to respond to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's the thing with Algier that we talked about. The 40 time, you look at that, it's a 4.6. It's like, oh, well, he's not that fast. But the 10-yard split, is a 1.56, and that's 84th percentile. So that's what you see. That's that explosiveness, that short area quickness. And he hit a 10-foot broad as well, which is pretty good for a running back. So
That's very explosive, by the way.
yeah,
People don't understand that.
when you look at like NFL combine numbers all day, I think people maybe get a little desensitized to how crazy, like, that's like, oh, 4.6. Oh, that's slow. It's like, no, that's not slow at all. That's faster than I could run in high school. I can tell you that. Like, I think I ran a 4.7, and I thought I was like the fastest dude in my high school, or something. And no, like every NFL player is faster than me. So, in like context, he's very fast, but just in NFL running back context, he's just slightly above average. But that 10-yard split is really good at 1.56, and I think that's what we're seeing is that explosive ability. And he's really made the most of this opportunity. He's a perfect fit for the scheme. And it really, I think, does free up another potential pick for the Falcons, because I think going into this season, it would have been, I think, logical for people to say, like, well, I wasn't expecting the Falcons to draft a running back in, like, the top 10, like we're hearing with some of this Bijan stuff. But day 2, maybe, if Patterson was showing more signs of slowing down and we didn't see what we needed to see from Tyler Algier, but instead we've seen Algier take off and look like this is the guy that might be our starting running back going forward. Patterson still being, perfectly capable of being the running back too, and then having a stable of guys behind them with Caleb Huntley coming back from injury, hopefully, and Avery Williams, one of the best returners in the NFL. You're not taking him off your roster, and he's shown, like, when he carries the ball, he's a perfectly fine change of pace back. So, I mean, if anything, you're talking about maybe adding like a day 3 pick as like a depth competition guy, or just looking for undrafted free agents. I mean, they've had a lot of success with that so far. So I just feel like it's a big development, Algier playing this well, because it does sort of streamline your needs on offense, more towards the offensive line side of things, in my opinion, than towards running back. And wide receiver, too, is something we'll have to discuss this offseason as being a need, because I think that it is. But I understand people not wanting to spend more picks on wide receiver, and they don't need to spend another first. But I think I could be talked into like a late day 2, early day 3 receiver, probably.
And I have a guy in mind too who I want in that round too. I've thought about this for a while. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, lay it on me.
All right. Well, I got to see, because I know technically he's a junior. I forget how the whole COVID extra COVID year works out with everybody, but I would ask people to look at Jacob Cowling from Arizona. So he started off his career in UTEP, and he is, much smaller guys. I think 5'11". But that's the thing. I think the Falcons, if they're going to have all these big body guys, right? We talk about the size of Kyle Pitts, talk about the size of Drake London. What's one thing that's missing? They need that guy that's underneath and can make the slot corner miss and run those routes. And I think Jacob Cowling is that guy. Now, and I'm going to put this with context, right? So anyone that's watching, I'm a Pac-12 guy. Like, I work for the Pac-12 conference. I watch a lot of Pac-12 football. That's why I know about Jacob Cowling, and I want to speak of him, because I do think that as good as he is, he's shown it in the Pac-12 for 1 year, because he was at UTEP before that. But even when he got to Arizona, he had a great year. Like I said, I watched a lot of tape on him, so I think he'll be there late. Like, you don't have to pick him in the top 3, maybe even 4 rounds. Like, I don't know what the talk is around him if he does decide to come out or not. I don't know, but he's one guy that I had on my radar, and I watched. I was like, wow, with all the big bodies the Falcons have, they need someone that's a little shifty. Yeah. Because I think at first we were hoping that Olamide could turn into that, but like we both talked about, he's kind of been somewhat MIA after Ritter took over. Also, it seems like he's more of a long speed guy than he is a short distance speed guy. Yeah, well, the Falcons also have that too in Demir Bird, and we've seen what Demir Bird can do. So they don't have that short lateral quickness person, which I think they're very much so missing in this offense.
Yeah, and I like a lot of their pieces. I just feel like they need more top end guys. I feel like their depth is pretty good. Like, I think I like Zacchaeus as like a wide receiver 3 sort of guy. I think Demir Bird and Kadero Hodge, those are perfectly good, depth receivers that can fulfill some roles for you. They just need another like high end guy. It doesn't even have to be like elite, like wide receiver 1 type of level of player, but just another sort of wide receiver 2, day 2-ish sort of guy that can provide something and provide another threat that teams have to contend with. Because this team has the run game, so that's going to
Yep.
help. They have Kyle Pitts, they have Drake London, and that's sort of two big weapons. But what we're really seeing is like the teams that have that third weapon
Hmm.
are the ones that really have been having a lot of success in this NFL. You know, you look at the Eagles with their three receivers, you look at the Bengals with their three receivers, and, you know, the Eagles, of course, have Dallas Goedert as well at tight end. So that seems to be the way this is going. And, you know, also with the Eagles have a great run game, that's sort of the blueprint maybe for this team of what you're trying to do there. And I think we're not that far off from that. You know, I think obviously the biggest difference between the Falcons and the Eagles is the trenches being a big issue for the Falcons, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. So we got a long way to go there. But yeah, speaking of the trenches, I thought this was another sort of struggle day for Drew Dahlman, who I think is maybe making himself the biggest target on the offensive line in terms of guys that you're looking to upgrade. Elijah Wilkinson, I think, had a better game than he did against the Saints. He's still sort of coming back from that injury. But again, like, I think Wilkinson has been good enough that you offer him a mid-level guard contract to be a potential option for you there.
Hmm.
And it's really like, you know, you can't afford to pay your left guard big money because we know Chris Lindstrom's getting probably NFL record-setting guard money. And
As
Caleb
he
McGarry's
should.
in line. Yes, as he should. And Caleb McGarry is going to be in line for a big contract too. So you need to go cheap at a few spots. And I think left guard is probably one that you have to do. And center, you know, I think that's one with the weakness of this free agent class that you're probably looking at in the draft. Again, it feels like every year for like 3 years they've been drafting centers. But third time's the charm, right? So
Well, I mean, here's the hard part with that. So I ultimately believe that, again, Caleb McGarry is having a very good year. Now let's also keep in mind, I think that, me personally, this is his one really good year
yeah,
that he's been having. So I would not be surprised if, instead of extending him, sending him a new contract, he's going to be the franchise tag guy. That would not surprise me from the Falcons. And again, I know I think that's the average of what, top 10
yeah.
paid players at that position.
I can pull it.
But
Up
again, I
quick.
guess
Yeah.
what the question is, well, would you rather give him a long-term contract based off 1 year, or would you pay him a lot of money for 1 year? Right, like that's kind of the conundrum that they're going to have at that position.
Yeah.
I think in terms of at center, because obviously it's Matt Hennessy and then also Drew Dahlman. And with Hennessy, he came in before this new regime did. So there's already that question of, well, how comfortable do they feel with them, and think he can get things done. I think with Drew Dahlman, I mean, again, look, the way I look at it is he the best center in the NFL? No, I'm not going to be here to say that. But as much as we love to, talk about the run game, talk about how highly graded this offensive line is by PFF, you don't get there without a center. And I say that in terms of a lot of different paths, whether it's just communication aspect, the knowledge aspect. Obviously, there's a physical play of it, you name it. Now, what happened with that fumbled snap between he and Ritter, I'm not sure. I don't know who's at fault for that. One thing I do know, and I was really happy about this, I was talking to one of my own sources. Yes, I have sources.
Oh man,
And
hashtag sources. Yeah.
there we go. Hashtag sources. One thing that I've learned about Drew Dahlman is I think he's been in touch and in contact with Todd McClure. Now, the reason why I think that's a big deal is not just because obviously Todd McClure was a phenomenal center for the Falcons. They're somewhat similar in their play styles. And what I say about that is, Drew is not going to be the ultimate bruiser, imposing force in the middle of middle of the line. Todd McClure wasn't that either, but he found a way to make it work. So I think that obviously that if there's a way that can happen, Todd McClure is going to help him out and make that work. So I don't know. I feel like to an extent, Arthur Smith and company, they're still going to ride with him because there are a lot of positives, right? There are a lot of positives there with him in the middle of the line. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see.
No, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. They've clearly shown an enormous amount of faith in Drew Dahlman. This is only his first year actually starting.
Yep.
So like I wouldn't be surprised if they gave him another chance. He's been okay. Like, he hasn't been a giant liability. No one on this line has really been anything like that. It's just like when you're the weakest link, which it seems like he is, but with the left guard turnstile, it's really kind of hard to tell some weeks because it hasn't been
Mhm.
consistent. But it's always you're sort of a target for the team to invest something to at least bring in competition. And maybe that's all it will be. This is a deep center class in the draft, so maybe it's not the the second round pick is the center and you're getting like the top guy in the class. Maybe it's like a late day 2 or early day 3 sort of center again that you're like, okay, we need to bring in more competition. We'll see. But between him and Hennessy, they do have two guys that have, fair amount of starting experience now. And maybe they just say, we're going to let it ride and we'll take our chances in free agency in 2024 when maybe there's going to be a better class. Because that would be the easy fix. Like if there was an Alex Mack out there for them to go get, that would be the easy fix. You're like, okay, we can just get this slam dunk, spend our premium money on really getting a slam dunk veteran center that we know is going to be able to come in and instantly do this. Instead, there's really not much out there. I mean, like Ethan Pochik is a guy, but it's not a great center free agency class. So they kind of either have to make do with what they have or go into the draft. And like we've said, like they've already spent quite a few resources on drafting centers. Do they really want to go back, or do they want to give these guys a chance? And I wouldn't be surprised if you're right and that Dahlman does get a chance, because they have a lot of other needs too, like that I'm sure we're going to get to this offseason. And we're not throwing the defense under the bus, but the defensive line in particular, and I think you could say safety and corner too, like they need reinforcements pretty much everywhere there. And they got worn down by the Ravens in this one. They only gave up 17 points, which is, I mean, not bad. Like, yes, the Ravens are playing a backup quarterback and they don't have a lot of receivers, but they haven't needed receivers all year. They just started the tight ends and they run the ball. And I think they did an okay job. If this defense holds anyone under 20 points, I consider that a win. Like, for years now, it's like that's all I'm asking. Just get under 20 points, and in a lot of the games. Yeah, and I think that they've legitimately given the offense a chance in every single game, and that's really this team with Arthur Smith at the helm and how they've invested their picks. This is an offense first team. The defense is just supposed to be here to yes, like it would be great if they could win some games for this team, but ultimately it's like the offense needs to be able to get the job done, and the defense just needs to slow down the opponent. And so far they've been able to do that, and I think, DPs deserve some credit for that. They've really cobbled this whole unit together with duct tape, and it hasn't been pretty ever. It's been extremely frustrating. There's some clear weaknesses in terms of the secondary and the coverage and the pass rush and allowing big plays and all these things, but at the end of the day, what counts is how many points you allow, and they've been opportunistic with the turnovers. They've been really getting, I think, better in the red zone, and they've been able to make the plays when it counted to keep the game within a score. And I think pretty much every single game, except maybe the Bengals game, this team had an opportunity to win it at the end on offense or close to it.
Right.
And that's impressive. That's really all we're asking from this unit that has so little invested in it at this point.
No, I agree. And I think there's one thing looking back towards earlier in the season, Dean Pease told us. He told us about this unit, because remember there was, I think someone had asked him, I forget what the exact question was, but his answer was along the lines of, it made it infer that someone asked him if he was, disappointed or not happy with how the defense was performing. He's like, no, I'm not. I'm absolutely not. But again, if you look at it sometimes, it's like, well, the way they're playing, why wouldn't you be? That's not really good defensive football at times, right? But
yeah,
again, he's telling you with what we have here, how hard they're playing, things like that. No, I'm not. Because as me, again, like I said, I'm a defensive guy. There's a lot I'm disappointed with the defense and what I'm disappointed in. It doesn't really have much to do with talent per se. So I just felt like, going back at that quote that he said, at this point in the season now, it's like, all right, no, that was pretty telling. It was pretty telling in my opinion.
Yeah, and we're seeing, I think this was one of Troy Anderson's better games too, and he's getting a lot of opportunity, and he's got a lot of room to grow. He was always a guy that I was like, I'm not sure if he's actually going to play much on defense this year, but put him on special teams in that case and see what he does. And they've actually taken him, I think that he plays some special teams still, but they're mostly playing on defense now. And I think it's getting there. It's getting closer, but I think for him, a whole offseason, in this program, really getting up to speed, and they're putting him right in the middle of the defense too. Like it's like it seems to me like they're really grooming him to be that middle linebacker, future captain of the defense, and that means they've got a lot of trust in him mentally to be able to handle that. And look, this is a guy who came into Montana State, played like 3-4 positions in 4 years,
Yep.
and then was like an all conference player every single one. So the NFL is a different beast, and it does take time to adjust. But I have total confidence in Troy Anderson, and I really like that pick. And I'm glad he's playing more now because I think he needs the reps, right? I mean, there's not really any replacement for live reps. But yeah, any other players that are starting to get more time now that you're impressed with? I know Timmy Horn was another guy that we're seeing a lot more of.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But again, I think, with Timmy Horn, and he's done some good things with his added reps. But again, like we talked about before, there's just no depth on the defensive line. He has to play. You kind of have no choice with that. In terms of people that are getting more playing time, I think that it's not a plus. It's more so of a minus that I'm concerned of. So we talked about Troy Anderson getting more playing time. Well, what does that say about Michael Walker?
Right.
Who, again, he was one of the higher round picks, I believe, for this regime. So, I think when you look at some of the rookies, second-year guys that this draft, the front office and Arthur Smith they've picked, there's really only a few of them where it's just like, really, like this is hit and miss. And I didn't think that Michael Walker was one of them, but the fact that they obviously feel comfortable enough of putting Troy Anderson in over him on defense, that is telling. As I think before the last couple of weeks, Michael Walker was playing 40, 50 snaps every game.
Right.
And now all of a sudden he isn't out there. Now, before, last weekend, like you said, and I say last week, I mean Sunday. Yeah, Troy had a good game. His other good game was against San Francisco. Now, if you want to think of any offense that could give a young linebacker all the headaches in the world to deal with, it'd probably be Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah.
And he had a solid game, right? But then after that, it was still back to Michael Walker. So that I guess that's kind of my question. Not even just in terms of is Michael Walker good or bad. That's not my job or role to say. I'm not here to do that. But it's more so for the coaching staff in terms of what have you seen or not seen from Michael Walker to make this situation happen.
Yeah, and I when you said that, I had to go back and look because I get these last draft classes like mixed up a lot because I feel like they all sort of happened and I try to. So I think what is it? Matt Hennessy and Michael Walker, Marlon Davidson, Matt Hennessy, Michael Walker, and Jalen Hawkins were all the final Dan Quinn class.
Okay, got you.
And I was like, because I get those guys mixed up all the time. But yeah, so
I
all
do
of
too.
and Hennessy, Walker, and Hawkins, as a result, I think have one more year under contract on their rookie deals.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I think, and then this year we got Troy Anderson drafted. So like, and
right.
What you said still applies though. It's like now that he's not their pick, so maybe that's part of it. Like they were trying to see what they had in him if he could play the role that they were hoping. A guy like maybe they, sort of a hint that they maybe envisioned more of a Troy Anderson type player in that role. Michael Walker, seeing if he could fulfill it, and I think he was okay at it. I always thought coming out, he was more of that like outside linebacker, Sam style player.
He's more built like that. Yep.
Yeah. And he did play a little bit of edge too at Fresno State. So it was like, I never really got the whole, let's make him an off ball, have him run around type of guy. And I don't think that's really his best fit. And I think we saw that this year that he's not the best trying to go up against the run on the outside. I do think he plays a lot better in coverage than you would think from like a Sam type player. But, I think they've sort of seen like maybe this isn't exactly what we want here. And with the team eliminated from playoff contention, it doesn't surprise me that they'd want to give their young guy more reps. And I know someone mentioned it in the chat too. D'Angelo Malone is who a lot of people would like to get more exposure to, and I 100% agree. I've been quite critical of Adeoye Ogundeji. I think he's had a bit of a rebound lately, but ultimately, I think that Malone we need to see, and I think he's been a solid impact guy for a third round pick. I think he needs to get more reps because we need to know, who can we trust in this edge group going forward. clearly I think we can trust Lorenzo Carter, and I'd like him to come back.
Yep,
But
absolutely.
how much can we rely upon Malone? And I think what I've seen in the flashes, I like a lot. But what do you think about Malone and why he's? I know they said it was because it was a lot of run heavy looks, and Ogundeji's sort of their run stopping edge rusher. But why do you want to see more of Malone? What do you think about why him not necessarily getting a big bump in playing time?
No, I mean that brings up a good point, and I just feel like for both of those guys, they have their limitations. We see Ogundeji, yes, he is a little bit better against the run. He also had the big time field goal block against Justin Tucker, which was, I got to shout him out for that.
Yes.
But then also for Malone, it's okay. He maybe has his limitations against the run, but it's better against the pass. My thing is, to your point, I think we've seen, at least for now, Ogundeji enough to know what he is. So might as well, if these last 2 weeks are about quote unquote tryouts, why not see more of him? See what you do have in him. Maybe he does surprise you a little bit with how he fits against the run. Because let's be honest, for the most part in this defense, there aren't many great players that fit against the run. Like I hate to say it, but that's just the truth. So, and you look at who they're going against these last 2 weeks, right? Arizona and Tampa Bay, both two teams that are not very good running the ball. So you might as well put him out there and see what he can offer to the plate. Because again, you talk about edge players. There's only one person that's really shown me something where it's like, okay, going forward, I really like yes, Lorenzo Carter, but outside of him,
he's sort of a unique guy, though. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I think that Arnold Ebiketie is this guy in terms of I was watching. I tried to watch some of his rushes very closely in the game on Sunday, and you just see there's certain moves and certain combinations that he's putting together already. Now it's not resulting in sacks right away. I'm okay with that. He's a rookie. That's fine. If we have to rely on a rookie for a very young player to get sacks like that, you're in trouble as a defense. But you see certain combinations and things already they starting to put together. It's like, okay, no, I think there's going to be something there. But obviously, especially the way football in the NFL is played now, you need more than just one edge guy that you can really rely on like that to make things happen. So outside of him, yeah, you might as well. If they don't feel comfortable enough seeing what else they have out there, give these other guys some reps in these last 2 games.
Yeah, and it's I agree with you 100%. Like when I watched Malone this offseason, I was like, this is a guy I think who can be like a third down specialist. He's sort of undersized and all this, but I think he's played the run like decently well. He's never going to be a guy that's like, this is the guy you want on the end, stacking up guys and trying to set the edge. But he's really, we've seen his athleticism, super athletic. I think he's got like 4 tackles for loss or something. And I think it was against the Saints. He had that great tackle for loss where he just flew back there and just smacked Kamara in the backfield. And I love that. And that's a splash play. On a snap per snap basis, I think Malone has been more productive as a tackler. As a sack guy, I think he has to check on the pressure numbers. Yeah, he has more pressures, the same number of sacks, more tackles for loss, less overall tackles than Ogundeji. Malone's only played 173 snaps. Ogundeji has played almost 500. So to me, it's like, okay, we know what we have in Ogundeji. I think even against the run, it's like I'd still rather see Malone just for the opportunity that maybe we get some tackles for loss out of it. Even though I agree, like this is never a guy that's going to be your primary edge defender against the run. But to me, it's just, man, like Ogundeji's lack of pass rush just really kills them if it happens to be a pass play while he's out there.
No, absolutely. And I think the thing too is if you look at the construction for the majority of this Falcons defense, they're not hanging their hat on big physical guys up front. Or, well, anywhere really over the field for the most part. I mean, I guess you'd say Rashaan Evans is like the only quote-unquote thumper that they have on defense. And, I mean, even A.J. Terrell, well, he'll stick his head in on the run game. But outside of that, there's nobody, I think, that in terms of a physical hit-you standpoint that really instills fear in anybody on this Falcons defense. I don't say that to say that as a bad thing they're soft. I'm just saying that's not how this defense is built. They seem to be much more faster defense, split gaps, move on stunts, things like that, especially when you look at the linebacker position. So if that's the case, that's how you're built. Why not put somebody else out there who's also very fast, can take gaps and make people miss in space? And then that's how they create those tackles and tackles for loss. I mean, you might as well put it out there.
Yeah. No, and I think it's part of it is like, I think we're seeing the linebackers that they want. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if Rashaan Evans is back. And they've got Trey Anderson in place. And I think they've got the framework of their edge room. They need like one more blue chip guy there. But really, like, that defensive interior, they need that true nose, and they need another big time guy in there. And they're missing, and they tried to do that, right? They tried to get Eddie Goldman in here to be that true nose. That didn't work out because he decided to retire. And then I think they had a decent complimentary pass rusher to Grady Jarrett and Vincent Taylor, who also did not end up playing this year due to a preseason training camp injury. So it's like they did make some signings and try to get this group to a better place, and then they lost a couple guys unexpectedly. The depth is just not possible to be there with their financial situation. So I think that's one of the big things I'd like to see this offseason is just a huge investment on the defensive line to bring that unit up to par with where it needs to be. And I think a lot of the secondary is getting criticism, but to me, it's like, I think honestly the pieces they have in the secondary are good enough. I mean, we'd all like to see maybe a high-end safety come in, like a Jesse Bates perhaps. And like, I would never say no to another good corner, but it's just like
they need that.
Yeah,
they need it.
They do. So it's like AJ Terrell's great, and Casey Hayward's going to be coming back, but Casey Hayward's getting older.
Yes.
Isaiah Oliver hasn't been as good as hoped. You know, Darren Hall just got benched for giving up one play, which maybe that wasn't the best idea in the world, but whatever. It's a tough spot there in the secondary, but I think they're all being made to look a lot worse because of the lack of pass rush and the defensive line just not being where it needs to be. So hopefully, like, I know people are like, oh, well, Richie Grant hasn't been great and Jalen Hawkins hasn't been great. And, these other corners, it's like, well, if they had a little bit more pass rush, I think they would probably look better. Maybe not great, but better. So.
No, I mean, that it's a good point. And I mean, I could also make the counterpoint. When I was coming up, through football, we always talk about how rush and coverage have to be married. And that means, if you have good coverage, it means you have good pass rush. Good pass rush also gets helped out by good coverage. And right now, the unfortunate reality is the Falcons really don't have either. And I'm saying that in terms of a unit. Like you said, AJ Terrell is really good. I mean, I don't have anything about him. We've seen Cornell Armstrong out there now for how many weeks? And no disrespect to him. He's playing hard. He's made a couple big plays. Obviously, there's a big, I think, 4th down stop in Cincinnati that he had. He's had a couple other PBUs. But if I'm a defense and I see AJ Terrell's on one side, for the most part, we saw there was a big play by Mark Andrews when he was over there. But for the most part, I'm not going to test AJ Terrell. I'm going to go to the other side.
Yeah.
So they still need that other guy over there. The Falcons, again, who knows how Hawkins and Grant will turn out. But I think that in terms of safety play, they've missed way too many tackles.
Yep.
Again, you just wonder, we talked about a little bit earlier in terms of thumpers, and I don't need my safeties to be heavy hitters. Again, it's not the early 2000s anymore where you can just, every big hit that happens in the middle of the field is not targeting.
Yeah.
But you do need someone there where, hey, it's time to come up, make a play, make a tackle. You can trust and expect that they're going to make that happen, and the receivers or whomever come and feel you, or the running backs coming up on that second level, they feel you. And from when I watch the Falcons play, that's just not the case right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that there needs to be a long, hard look at a lot of these players, and there's a lot of cap space and probably some pretty good draft picks to go around, but it has to be used correctly because we still have a lot of holes to fill. It's not like, oh, this is a good team and we've got all these resources, so we can just go, just spray this cap around and go crazy and throw money. Like, you have to be smart, and I do think that they will, based on what we've seen from this front office so far. Is that I know people are expecting like a bunch of big splash signings. I think we'll see some, like 1 or 2 probably, but the rest of it, I think they're probably going to be diligent about. Previously, we could afford to bring in like 7 guys at like $2 to $3 million. Now we can afford to bring in 7 guys at $5 to $6 million and just really upgrade our middle of our roster with a lot of these role players that are going to be high-end role players, not necessarily stars, but it's going to really flesh out our ability to play against specialized opponents. Like, against the Ravens, it would have been great if they had a specialized like 3-4 defensive end that's like a great run stopper to throw in there, or like an extra, like a more run heavy safety they could rotate in to help bolster this stuff. And you're not getting any Pro Bowlers for, $5 to $7 million usually. Sometimes you get a little lucky there, but you can get some very good role players, and that's what they're really missing right now, is that middle sort of the roster, and then they need just a couple blue chip guys, and we could be looking at a very different defense and offense too next season. So that's my hope, and we're holding on to hope here with the Falcons sitting at 5-10. So,
well, I think for the most part, though, and to your point, when we came into this year, I don't know how many Falcons fans came into the season thinking that it would be, week 16, week 17, where we're finally knocked out of the playoff and division race. Before it was, well, everyone knew how much cap space, or approximately how much cap space that they would have going into next year. So it's okay, let's see what we have to build with. What do we have to work with? So that way, when year 3 of this regime with Terry and Arthur, are they in a good position to really start competing and try to make things happen? And when I say competing, I'm not saying Super Bowl. I'm saying, playoff pushes, NFC South pushes, things like that. And so that, it's kind of back where we are now. And this is why I think we're having this conversation. It's, well, they're knocked out of the playoffs, like officially. So let's talk about what is there, what isn't there. And, I think some people are talking about, I think Dave, he made this one comment in the YouTube comment section. Shout out Dave, because he's putting a lot of good points in there. He talked about Daron Payne. I'm a big fan of Daron Payne. I'm a big fan of the Falcons trying to go get him. And the reason why I say that is because, well, one thing he was saying is he's not the traditional nose guard, so they'd have to switch up. The Falcons would have to switch up things they do on defense. My question then is, what is that traditional nose guard that they already have?
Right, they don't have one. They cut
exactly.
Anthony Rush, who was the one they had.
Right. Exactly. So they already have to do some changing and switching things around to make things work. I mean, it can't happen. And plus, I think the good sign of a good coach, which I think his track record for Dean Pease has shown, you don't bring players in and just make them fit to what you want to do. You also have to, it's a mix. Yes, you want certain players that fit your system, but also for some of the players that come in, you have to switch up what you do a bit to make that work for them too. And Daron Payne, obviously, as talented as he is, he's one of those guys that if you bring him in, you find a way to make that work. With Payne and Grady Jarrett inside, you find a way to make that work. There's no excuse to not make it work, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, and I think people get a little too invested in, like, oh, in a 3-4 you play, a nose tackle,
right?
And, this and that. It's like, no, I mean, why can't you play a 1 and 2 3s, or a 1, a 3 and a 5, or whatever? Like, you can play a 0 and 2 3s. You can get some bear fronts going. I mean, like, there's plenty of ways where you could get Grady Jarrett, Daron Payne, and a traditional nose tackle on the field at the same time. It's not that difficult. Like, these teams are not going. I don't think these guys are going to be rigid with how they line up the front. I think they're going to just try to get their good players out there however they can. And we're seeing that with like a guy like Timmy Horn, who was a college nose tackle. He's been playing a lot of 3-4 defensive end. So it really just get the guys out there, like get the good players. We'll figure out how to use them. Like I think that's a good strategy to have, and not be overly reliant on a certain scheme or system. And I think that's one of the criticisms that Dan Quinn had while he was here, is that we were going to rush 4 and we were going to, play cover 3 on the back end. And that was that's what we do.
That's it.
And even if the players, and John Kaminsky is an unfortunate casualty of this, right? Like, he didn't really fit that 3. He didn't fit the 4-3 very well, and they sort of tried to make him an edge, and they tried to make him this and that. When really, this guy is probably just a 3-4 defensive end, like what he played in college. Goes to the Lions and looks great, So it, I think being too rigid is something that can hold you back, and I do like. Arthur Smith on offense too is the same way. Like, they've really, I think, been creative about how they deployed some of these guys. So I think they deserve some props for that. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And that's the thing. So when I was at Stanford, we were a 3-4 based defense, which for the most part, like my older years, like, when I was young, we had, your typical nose guard, stout fire hydrant kind of guy. And then you build off of that. But that's not always the case. And also there's different types. It's not just you put somebody over the nose, you put somebody as a 4-eye on the tackle, put somebody in 4-eye on the tackle. No, there's so many different looks with it. And then also there's certain movements and different stunts and games you can run within that 3-4 as well. So it's just a matter of with who you have, find out what the strengths are, how you make it work. Because it can work. You don't have to have a traditional, all your guys up front in the 3-4, your 300-pound, 6'2", 6'3" kind of guys. You can make a 3-4 work without that. And like I said, when you have guys as talented with a building block up front with Grady Jarrett and potentially Deron Payne, you can find ways to make it work.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, we're up to an hour here, guys. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap things up. I did want to get to Jason Gaines' question from earlier. I think my thing loaded. It popped up, and it says it's over an hour old. So I apologize, Jason. With the $2, he says, I just want to say I hope that that refereeing crew led by Bill Vinovich and his entire crew got that lump of coal in their stocking for Christmas yesterday. That intentional grounding call was awful. Also, I hope that Arthur Smith does not have a heart attack while arguing bad calls. # high blood pressure. Yeah, that's I also would probably do that if I was in Arthur Smith's shoes. But please stay healthy, Arthur. We need you out there, bud. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, Jordan, anything else you wanna touch on before we sign off?
Yeah, I mean, I guess obviously there were a lot of terrible, terrible calls in my opinion in this game. By the officiating. Talk about the rough in the, I mean, not rough pass, intentional grounding. There's another one that got a touchdown pulled away from us. Even the one that the Ravens got in the end zone, they had a touchdown pass in one of the sidelines. It wasn't even the fact that it stood. They confirmed it.
Yeah,
there was nothing that I saw on any of those replays that said, yes, this is confirmed a touchdown. Even if they would have said call stands, all right, cool, I get it. My question now, and here's the thing, you talk about how you said earlier about how Arthur Smith has been, he's made the most for the most part of what he can with the offensive capabilities, which is true. But there are also times where I've been concerned in those gotta have it situations.
Yeah.
Right. Like for example, this is a game. It's cold. The wind was blowing. Anyone that's been in a cold weather game before, they'll let you know the biggest things that matter in those situations: take points when you can, change field position. Those are the two biggest things. But also, when you do have a chance to take advantage of points, you got to go for it.
Yeah.
There was 1 4th down. The Falcons went in the middle of the field. I think it was a deep ball to Demir Bird. Didn't agree with it because again, you change field position in that situation when you can. Also, the play calling down when they had the goal to go situation. So 3rd down, they took Tyler Algier off the field, bringing Cordero Patterson. Now, obviously, as we know, we love Cordero. He is one of the kings of the angry runs.
Yes.
Right? Like you give him the ball, boom, he's going to run through people and find a way to make it happen. That wasn't really the case on Saturday. The Ravens did a good job of keeping him in check. So the thing for me was, my defense, the way I think was, well, Tyler Allgeier's not in. This is going to be a pass play. And it was. Now, obviously, Desmond Ridder got close to running it in, but didn't. But then they bring Tyler Algier back in. So if I'm a defensive player, it's like, wait, 25's back in the game. He's getting this ball. This is a run play. So I just felt like it was one of those situations where the coaching and the scheme, it kind of put the offense in a disadvantage. And it's not the first time that we've seen it. So that overall, don't get me wrong. I don't want to make this seem like I'm just completely against Arthur Smith, because I'm not. All I know is what I'm saying is there have been some situations in certain games now where even when he does get better talent, which I think we all think and hope is coming along the way, do you change up some of the decision making that you've made in big situations to make it work still? Like the last thing I want to do, I think he kind of has a quote unquote scapegoat from a lot of people where it's the roster's not there, talent's not there, yada, yada, but we've still been close, which is true. But a lot of those games too, where they've been close, it's, well, if you make this different decision or that different decision, how does this go? So that was one of the takeaways I had from that game too.
Yeah. And I think the hope for everyone is that Arthur Smith also takes this offseason and evaluates what he's done and the decisions that he's made and makes some different ones going forward. And ultimately, deep down, you're not going to change fundamentally what you do, but I'm hopeful that he will continue to do that, because I think we've seen generally him make really good decisions in the red zone throughout his career in the NFL and really scheme up some good stuff. And I do wonder if he's pressing a little bit now and really trying to reach into like a deep bag of tricks to try to overcome some of these personnel problems, when I think really like you probably could just run your offense, and you probably have a better chance of it then. But I do wonder if part of it is like he knows like how strapped they are for talent, especially in the passing game right now. And they don't trust the defense, even though the defense is doing a decent job. So it's like let's dive into our bag of tricks and really try to pull out some fancy plays, when it's like maybe you should just run Tyler Algier 4 times, like that, maybe you should. But that's my hope, is that he will also look inward as well as looking outward to fix the roster. So
no, same here. I ultimately my goal and my dream, I want Arthur Smith to be a full-on bully. Like I really do. And here's what I mean by that. The Falcons, and obviously I think everyone's probably hearing me say that. It's like, what do you mean? We have one of the best running attacks in the game or whatnot. It's like, yes, we absolutely do. But there's also been a lot of situations where they could have used it even more. Now, I want him to have that mindset. And he's right. And in my opinion, just watching the games, he's right there. I want him to have that mindset of, it doesn't matter. We're going to run the ball. You can't stop it. So, I mean, we've seen it before. I call it the impose your will drives. Saw one against Cleveland, right?
Yep.
17 straight run plays. Good luck stopping it. Boom, touchdown. You saw it in New Orleans last weekend. Tyler Algier just pretty much took the team down the field himself, along with help of some good blocking, and made it work. So it's there. It is there. Go ahead and just lean on it, lie on it, trust it, and just go with it. That's what I want to see, because I think there's so many times where they do it, and then when they really need to do it, they kind of shy away from it.
Yeah.
Just lean all the way in, and then when it's time for when we're in the moment where the passing game can also somewhat complement it, which again, I thought last week we kind of saw it a little bit in the middle of the field. You really have something dangerous to deal with.
Yeah, and I'm excited about how this team will look next season with these investments and with hopefully a more well-rounded roster, because they've been really close. Like, I mean, if this team had the Vikings luck in one-score games, they'd be running away with the NFC South. I mean, it would be hilarious. And it just they regressed to they regressed back to the mean in these one-score games. They were excellent in them last year. This year they've been sort of mediocre. So it is what it is. It's difficult, but they've been close, and I think with any team that's playing as many close games as they are, the opportunity for a bounce back is there. And especially if this team finishes 4th in the division, which it seems like pretty likely that it's going to happen now, you get that 4th place schedule again. And we all know every single year there's at least one worst to first team. And I think the Falcons next year will be an extremely trendy worst to first pick. And I think it's going to be justified, because they're probably going to hopefully sign some great players, draft some great players, and be able to get, this thing going in the right direction from all sides, not just like, oh, I like that they've been able to do this and that with limited resources. It's like, no, now the resources are actually here. We're using them correctly and responsibly and getting a good product on the field. So it all has to come together, but I think they're set up well to make that transition this offseason.
And who knows how the rest of the division is going to look. I mean, you look at some other teams in other divisions who are going to be in last place. So whether it's, like NFC West, I guess it would be the Cardinals. The 49ers are still going to be good. You look in the NFC North, I think their last place team right now is probably Chicago. Well, they still have a hump to go over, because I'm willing to bet. I mean, and now Chicago, they're going to be interesting to look at, because they're also a team like the Falcons that's going to have all this cap space to build with and build on. So we'll see. They give some help around Justin Fields in that regard, but I don't think Minnesota is really going to go anywhere. Like, they'll probably lose more games next year than they will this year, because we talked about that one possession record. And then, of course, you look at the NFC East, and I'm just going to NFC. I'm not going to go to the AFC and bore people out. But, the Cowboys are still going to be a good team. The Eagles are still going to be a good team. So I wouldn't look at any team that's in last place there that will turn things around, even though I know all the teams over there have a pretty good record right now. So, yeah, it's who has the weakest first place team right now in the NFC, and that's obviously NFC South. So, yeah, why not the Falcons turn that around and be a trendy worst to first pick?
Yeah, I'm hoping that they do it, certainly. But we got a
You
couple
only
more
hope.
games. Got a couple more games this season before we get there, and we're gonna break those down for you guys over the coming weeks. And before we dive full on into this off season, because it's gonna be a fun one. No matter what happens on the field, the off season is always calling with hope, and I think this is a particularly hopeful, fun one for this team. So, first off, guys, thanks for listening. Thanks. Please give us a like and subscribe on YouTube if you are so inclined. We appreciate that. Helps us out. If you're listening to the podcast, leave us a 5-star review if you enjoyed the show. Thank you so much. Yeah, guys, we will get this stuff going this week. We'll be back on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern for the next Falcoholic Live. Before we take off, I want to thank Jordan Watkins at Big75 Fella on the Twitters for helping me out today. Jordan, anything you'd like to plug?
Not really anything to plug. I just want to hopefully wish everyone's having a wonderful holiday season. I know we just had Christmas. I think it was the last day of Hanukkah. Kwanzaa's going on. And of course, we'll go into New Year's Day next Sunday. So also here's a hoping that when we have New Year's, let's start 2023 with the Falcons having an undefeated record. I mean, that would be nice, right?
Yeah.
That would be great. So, no, I hope everyone's having a wonderful holiday season. Get to spend time with your loved ones. I hope Santa was on point for you this year if you believe in them, and no, all that. That's what I want to plug.
Absolutely. Yep. And I'm hopeful as well. I do think they're going to win this Cardinals game. So all this talk
They
of,
should.
Second, third overall pick, maybe it's like, I don't really think so, but who knows with this team, but yeah, that Cardinals team's a whole mess. So
Yes. And I always say the best thing to help a rebuild get faster is you win games. Have the people in that locker room believe that, no, they're good enough to make these things happen instead of, well, not just believe. I think they believe it already, but have some results to go along with those beliefs.
Yeah,
that would help. That is the biggest thing.
Yeah. Always finishing strong is always better than going in on a big slump.
Yes.
No matter what. So, guys, thank you so much for listening. I'm Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin. You can follow me there and see all my stuff on thefalcoholic.com. Until next time, folks, we will see you on Wednesday on the Falcoholic Live.